Hello everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Banff and Beyond, our series on transplant biopsies. As always, I'm Dr. Murphy and excited to bring you this interesting case, so let's get started. Today's biopsy is from a 40-year-old male status post-renal transplant approximately 1.5 to 2 years ago. Of note, the patient also had an autologous stem cell transplant and prior chemotherapy for myeloma. He presents for routine follow-up today with a mildly increased creatinine of 1.4 milligrams per deciliter, but has been compliant with his immunosuppressive medications, and thus a biopsy was pursued. As we start to evaluate this biopsy, we can see a low power on this PAS stain that is composed entirely of cortex with multiple glomeruli. Moving to the second low power image, we can appreciate while there isn't too much interstitial blue or interstitial inflammation, there is still one area with some concern comprising approximately 10 to 15% of the sample. Now, if we move to medium power in this concerning area, we can see that we do in fact have interstitial inflammation percolating through this patch of unscarred cortex, composed predominantly of lymphocytes with occasional plasma cells. Additionally, at this high power, we can also appreciate patches of somewhat bubbly interstitial edema. In this next high-power image of a PAS stain, we can appreciate moderate tubulitis within this longitudinally sectioned intact tubule, as well as scattered inflammation. So given that we have interstitial inflammation meeting criteria for an I1 and up to moderate tubulitis for a T2 score, we have met criteria for borderline acute T-cell mediated rejection. However, if we continue to examine the case and move our attention over to the glomeruli, via PAS we can first appreciate in this glomerulus that we have significant mesangial matrix expansion along with mesangial hypercellularity. Now we can see that not only is there significant mesangial expansion and hypercellularity, there is also endocapillary proliferation here, here, and here. As we continue to peruse glomeruli, on the silver stain we can again appreciate endocapillary proliferation. Now, given that this is a transplant, it brings up somewhat of a conundrum because the first thought here would be overt glomerulitis and possible antibody-mediated rejection. However, as you can see in this next image, the peritubular capillaries are essentially devoid of mononuclear cells, hence no peritubular capillaritis, and in addition, a C4D stain was negative. So all in all, the biopsy features are actually pointing us somewhat away from antibody-mediated rejection and rather towards possibly another disease entity. Additional clinical history also revealed that the patient did not have donor-specific antibodies, further strengthening the argument against antibody-mediated rejection. It is important to note that when evaluating transplant biopsies, we not only have to think about rejection, but also have to remember that any disease that can affect a native kidney is also fair game in the transplant and may occur either recurrent or de novo. Now, if we turn our attention to our immunofluorescence panel, you can see that we have 3+ granular mesangial staining, mesangial meaning the tree trunks instead of the tree limbs, with IgG, C3, and kappa, 2+ staining with C1q, and importantly, no significant staining with lambda light chain. Furthermore, IgG subclass staining was performed due to the light chain restriction and showed 3+ staining with IgG3, while all other subclasses were negative. Then, if we finish with a representative electron microscopic image, we note that numerous mesangial electron-dense deposits are present, correlating with our pattern seen by immunofluorescence. So in addition to borderline acute T-cell mediated rejection, we also have in this biopsy an entity known as proliferative glomerulonephritis with monoclonal immunoglobulin deposits, also known as PGMID. In short, PGMID is considered an MGRS lesion or monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance, despite the fact that further workup only reveals an identifiable clone 20 to 30% of the time. It should also be noted that this entity can be what we call masked on routine immunofluorescence and may look exactly like C3G with no significant staining of heavy and light chains. However, when immunofluorescence is performed on the paraffin-embedded tissue after pronase digestion, unmasking occurs and you will see a pattern compatible with this entity. Importantly, studies have shown that in this masked variant, a detectable clone is identified much more frequently. Of final note, important to the transplant setting is that studies have shown that PGMID recurs rather quickly, with most recurring within a year. In our case, we did not have a prior native biopsy to compare. However, this feature is suspicious for recurrent disease given his history. Thanks again, everyone, and hope you enjoyed another interesting case in the world of transplant, and hope to see you again next time.